Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Done quite a few stories lately about rental cars, in particular Hertz. And Hertz has had issues and not a lot of good public relations publicity lately. And things got worse for them. They took an ugly turn over the Thanksgiving holidays because a law professor went viral over a Hertz experience during Thanksgiving, calling what Hertz does extortion. Now, I got the story here from foxbusiness.com, but I've also got the story as told by the law professor herself. So I'm going to jump back and forth because the story she tells is quite lengthy. It's 5 pages long, single space, and she tweeted that out, the entire story. But her name is Kate Klonick, and she's threatening to take Hertz to small claims court over bad rental experience. But because she tweeted the story and laid the whole story out so well, it got a ton of attention. In fact, her tweet, I checked this morning, has 2,800 comments, 12,900 retweets, and 51,000 likes, and those numbers are still climbing. But Daniela Genovese wrote the story for Fox Business, and the law professor is trending on Twitter after she posted her lengthy letter about how Hertz allegedly extorted her during Thanksgiving. She's an assistant professor at St. John's University School of Law, and she is an attorney in the state of New York. She detailed her very bad experience of trying to rent a car over the holiday in a Twitter thread, which eventually went viral. And they will not give her money back, at least as of me talking right now. And so she's saying that, no, she'll take them to small claims court and see what happens. So here's the letter she wrote, dated November 29th, 2021, addressed to the Hertz Corporation of Oklahoma. Dear Hertz Customer Service and Support. She tells the story and says, I am a barred attorney in the state of New York. Now, I usually go with I'm a licensed attorney or I'm an attorney licensed to practice law in the state of Michigan, but barred attorney means she's been admitted to bar. I reserved a car, a medium sedan, from Hertz.com with a confirmation number for pickup on Sunday, November 21st at noon. That's the Sunday before Thanksgiving week, and she booked it for 1 week at the Brooklyn Barclays Center location on Dean Street. The quoted price of the rental was $343.27, but with taxes would have been $414.93. She arrived at the location at noon to find a line of 15 people waiting to pick up cars. Now, she understands that she got there at noon, the reservation's at noon, and there's a line. That's okay, she gets in line. She says, people seem generally agitated, and I was told that there's only one person working the desk, and the location would close at noon, but people whose reservations were for pickup at noon would be accommodated. So that seems kind of strange. The attendant announced she would only serve the first 5 people in line, and the other 10 were out of luck because she's going to close. She's scheduled to close at noon. She doesn't care what your reservation is for. So the woman writing the letter here says, I thought this was perhaps a misunderstanding because I had a contract. And she would know because she is, in fact, a law professor. And I had met its terms. Hertz simply had to fulfill its side of the deal. So I waited in line for the next 2 hours. Somehow it takes 2 hours to process the people in front of her in line. Meanwhile, because I did not have a cell service at the location, my partner called customer service 2 times and tried to see if there's any way we could get a rental elsewhere. We were told to stay in line and that as a gold member, I would be served so long as the woman at the counter was taking customers. On the second call, he was told we could make a new reservation at the Union Street station, but it would cost us $1,800. So a substantial increase in price, and you can do that if you want to, which they declined. At 2:15, the woman closed the window, turned out the lights, and told us to call customer service. She circled an 800 number on the letter and told us to call them. There were 3 of us left at the bottom of a concrete parking garage in 40-degree weather. We had patiently stood in line, and we offered her cash from our wallets. We literally held up $20 bills and begged, please, there are only 3 of us left. Please give us cars. She declined for reasons I now believe that are separate from the ones that she gave us, but this is not about her. This is about you. And she's referring, of course, to Hertz. I left that location, called the nearest location nearby, which was at Union Street. They had already closed at 2 o'clock. I then called customer service and was disconnected twice after being put on hold for 15 minutes or more. On my third try, I spoke to someone who advised me that I could go to LaGuardia Airport and there would be cars there. I asked if there's any way to get a reservation. She said that if I moved the reservation, I'd have to pay the new rate in excess of $1,800 for the week. I told her that was too much. I asked her if there was any way to honor the rate I'd agreed to in my contract, and she said her hands were tied. There was nothing she could do. I would have to ask that at LaGuardia. Now, it might be a good reason to emphasize how important this reservation was, and she tells about how Thanksgiving's important to her. So, seeing no other options, around 3 o'clock, my partner, my blind and deaf rescue elderly dog, and I loaded our belongings into an Uber and traveled 45 minutes to the airport. This trip cost us $42.34. When we arrived there, we went to the counter and explained our situation, gave my gold number and confirmation number from the promised rental, and the manager said that all her cars were reserved for other people, and they were unable to make a new reservation, and we had to call customer service again. At this point, I was somewhat exasperated, and the rental agent offered a call from her landline phone, but told me my number is the same as yours. So she put the call on speaker after talking to a representative and asking to speak to their supervisor. We were put on hold for 27 minutes before the phone call was disconnected. We called back again and asked to speak to a supervisor, and this time we were disconnected after 15 minutes. So the supervisor can disconnect you faster than regular customer service. That's what I take from that. We called back again. We were told the supervisor would not be able to help us, and that our only option was to pay $1,800 for a new reservation and rental. We refused and decided to go home. We called an Uber, loaded our bags, and of course the dog, and we got into an Uber. It took an hour to get home, cost us $43.87. On the way home, I called the customer service number again. It was approximately my 13th call. I asked to speak to a supervisor, I was put on hold, and 34 minutes later was disconnected. We arrived home, called the customer service number for the 14th time, spoke to a woman named Ivy, who informed me there was nothing they could do and that the only option was to rent a car at LaGuardia. I explained that we had just come from there. It had cost us around $100 in 2 hours of our life, and they had no cars. She said that, she'd look into that, and she'd look into whether there were other cars in my area for the next day. After 38 minutes on hold, she said there was a car she could rent me in Williamsburg, but the cost of the rental would be $1,800. And that is the recurring theme in this story over and over again, is that she gets put on hold, they hang up on her. Gets put on hold, they hang up on her. And finally they come back and they say, we found you a car, it's $1,800. And she has the rental, supposedly, locked in at $414. And they say, no, we can't do that, but we can get you another one for $1,800. So in her letter, on page 3, she points out that this is a violation of the Department of Consumer Affairs Consumer Protection Law in New York City. And she says in another phone call, she's put on hold for 45 minutes. And she was told she'd gotten permission to give me a reservation at Williamsburg tomorrow at 8 a.m. that honored my original rate. And she said that she would send an email confirmation, and the email never arrived. So at this point in the story, it is now the following day. At 7 a.m., we woke up, loaded all our bags and our poor dog into an Uber, which drove us to Williamsburg at a cost of $47.32. We arrived at the Hertz locations there, explained to the two agents that we had a reservation for 8. They looked at us like we were insane. They asked for a confirmation number. I provided it. They then shuffled through paperwork and told us we were on a wait list and that there were 3 people ahead of us. There were no more cars. They had 17 cars today, and they weren't even all back yet. They had 20 people with reservations. So, having been told over the phone, yeah, you got a reservation, go there and get a car, she's now being told, no, we don't have enough cars to go around. They then told her you should go back to where you had your original rental booked. They're the best place. They'll be able to help you. I'm sure you've never been to the Hertz office in Williamsburg, so let me describe. It is a small room with no window and only a door on the first floor of a parking garage of an apartment complex on the waterfront, approximately 9 feet by 9 feet. It has 2 small desks. 2 people work at the 2 desks. On the wall, there's a giant sign that describes the rights of people who rent cars in New York, and it talks about what you can do to report complaints, including contacting the New York City Department of Consumer Affairs. But it says specifically that if you've made a reservation for a car, that reservation must be honored at the price originally promised. And that is on the wall of the office of Hertz And she's looking at that while people are saying, well, we can't get you your promised rate, but we can do it for $1,800. So I took a picture of the sign. I want to thank your Hertz Williamsburg office for saving me a Westlaw search. And that's a lawyer joke. Any event, there we stood on a Monday morning, 8 a.m., with 2 employees, me, my partner, 6 bags, and a shaking old blind deaf dog in approximately 36 square feet of space in a pandemic the Monday after Thanksgiving. So the employees there tried to call the customer service number, but were put on hold. They called the Dean Street location of my original rental, where no one answered. And at that point, the rental agent said, hey, maybe she stopped serving people at the Dean Street location because she knew they were overbooked and they ran out of cars, but this way they can make it seem like it's your fault because you showed up late to the reservation. So this is a Hertz agent telling her that this could be what's going on. Yeah, it happens all the time, he said. Customer service has no idea of our inventory, and no one ever picks up the phone at the desks, so they just overbook things. Interesting, I said, noting the remark in my notepad and noting it to my partner to make sure he had also heard it. We then sat down on top of our bags 4 feet from the employees and proceeded to wait until people hopefully didn't show up for their cars. Now, the employees there seemed genuinely concerned at first because I started to cry, and then because it was clear we were not going to leave their tiny office until we had a car. And they began whispering amongst themselves. Finally, one said, would you be okay with a different class of car? And we said, yes, anything. He said, and it's a mechanical. It means there's something wrong with it. In this case, the rear backup camera doesn't work, but otherwise the car is fine and it's a compact. My partner said, I don't know how old you think we are, but I can assure you we're old enough to remember driving without backup cameras. The employee laughed and went out to get our car. The car was a Kia Fiesta compact, white. It was beautiful. Back seat was covered in some type of pet hair, and the cup holders were dirty. It had no gas in the tank, but it was a vehicle that would transport us 6 hours back to Western New York. My partner and I hugged. We rummaged through our stuff, found a bottle of very nice champagne we were going to have for Thanksgiving. And I said, I want you to have this for helping us. I told the employee, thank you for saving our Thanksgiving. He chuckled, put it in a drawer, and said, can't let my supervisor see this one. The other agent started getting ready to check us out. Everything was set, except they could not give us the car at the original rate because they never really did a reservation. They just put a note on the file that we should honor the earlier rate. This is going to cost you $943. But let me call a supervisor. Now, we know how that goes. The nice lady, the agent, called her supervisor, who told her no, they would not honor the earlier rate. We would have to pay $943, despite the big sign on the wall that says that's not how it works. I looked at my partner and whimpered, it's just money. Let's just pay it, otherwise we'll miss Thanksgiving. We authorized the purchase on the credit card with a reservation number, loaded the car with our bags and our old blind deaf rescue dog. We thanked the representative at Hertz Williamsburg again. Now, there is a vital piece of information missing from the story. That is the name of the dog. I actually wish I knew the name of the dog, but we don't find that out. My partner asked, do you want to drive? I said, no, I have a complaint to write. And so she sat down and hammered out this 5-page letter, where she says this letter serves as a request for reimbursement of $528, which is the difference in price between the original violated contract and the amount paid to remedy the violated contract. So the contract was breached, and she had to pay money to fix the breach. We call that what's the cost of covering is. She had to cover the contract. So when someone breaches a contract and it costs you money to fix what they did wrong, you can sue them for the cost, and that's the breach, and the measure is the cover. So it also requests reimbursement for $133 in Ubers. Again, they had to do that to take care of themselves. And finally, we request a reimbursement in punitive damages, the amount of $87 for the very nice bottle of champagne. Now, that's one I'm not sure she's legally entitled to. But I get her point. Separately, she says, I'll be filing a complaint with the Better Business Bureau, New York City Department of Consumer Affairs, and any state and federal equivalents. I deeply suspect that these practices are specifically designed to extort money from people who, when put in situations where they are absolutely in need of a car, will pay exorbitant fees, multipliers of the promised price simply to get a vehicle. I also suspect that your shoddy and Kafka-esque customer service process and lack of communication between corporate and counter is by design in order to discourage complaints and fair and equitable resolution. Perhaps most important, I suspect, and your own employees have given me reason to believe, there might be enough people for a class action suit for these kinds of fraudulent practices. Hey, get in line. Hertz is getting hit with class action lawsuits right now and other things too. Total damages requested $748.90. We expect payment and response by December 15, or I'll be filing in small claims court. You should be thrilled I'm not adding in my hourly rate for lost wages. Sincerely, Kate Klonick, Esquire. So, and I apologize, it might be Klonick, but it's Klonick. And it's a terrifying story. But it's many people have suffered through things quite like this. And that is that you're on vacation and you're halfway through your trip and somebody who has a very, very important piece of the trip in their hands can blackmail you for more money. And I've had it happen to me where I was traveling. And an agent at an airport said, you have to pay us $200 in cash or you can't get on that plane. Well, that plane's leaving. And on principle, I could refuse to pay the money. Or I could pay the money now and try to get the money back later, which I did, by the way. But I think I've talked about that before. Here, when you fly someplace or you go someplace and you show up at the counter to rent a car, your plans probably include you doing things in that rental car that you can't do without the rental car. And I went to Los Angeles a couple weeks ago and rented a car there. Had a great experience, but I can assure you it was not with Hertz. It's the Thrifty. And got in the shuttle, got in line, walked up, very, very friendly guy took care of me, got in a car, and boom, we were on our way. And so the problem, of course, is that we heard what happened. We have no reason to doubt any of this. In fact, I have reason to believe all of it, just simply because we know how Hertz is. But you'll notice there's a couple little oddball facts that are thrown in there, where somebody said, from Hertz apparently, that Hertz doesn't keep track of how many cars they've got, or they don't do as good a job tracking them as they ought to. So you could underbook, you could overbook, or you could just get lucky. But you don't want to underbook because you lose money. If you got cars sitting there, you want to rent them out. So somebody suggests they might be overbooking on purpose because that guarantees that all the cars are out. And yeah, it might inconvenience some travelers, but you're making as much money as you can, right? And this idea that you can rent a car and get a reservation at $414. And then they say, well, we can't give you a car for that, but we can give you a car for $1,800. And if you stick to your guns and go, no, I want to pay the $414, we can't find you a car. But they could find her a car for $1,800. Well, the amount of money you've got in your pocket should not determine how many cars they've got available. Meanwhile, Fox Business contacted Hertz, and Hertz says, we are investigating the situation to better understand what occurred so we can take any necessary corrective actions. Well, it ain't hard to understand. You can read the letter. And let's say you choose not to believe the letter writer. I'm speaking to Hertz here. You can call up your employees because she gives the names and the locations of these employees, and you'd have records of who was working that day. And you could simply call them and say, hey, look, did this woman get in line at noon? Did she have a noon reservation? Why didn't you give her a car? I mean, I suspect you know the answers to that question, though, right? So Hertz further added that in the event we're unable to provide a reserved vehicle class at the confirmed time, it's our policy to make every reasonable effort to assist the customer. But the problem is, why are you unable to provide a reserved vehicle class at the confirmed time? So they said this includes providing a comparable vehicle at the same rate if available, moving a vehicle from another location in close proximity, delivering a vehicle to the customer, paying for a taxi, or sourcing a vehicle from a competitor if at an airport. When these options are available, we would extend the same rate. Oh! So the $1,800 thing was what? We're going to forget that happened? Hertz said that they apologized to Klonick and claims that they refunded the rate difference. However, Klonick tweeted what she saw on her credit card statement was the final charge, not a refund, and she tweeted out, small claims court, here I come. So I went and looked at her Twitter feed this morning to see if she'd gotten a refund, and nothing was mentioned there of her getting a refund. So Hertz claims they've taken care of it, but there's no mention of it on Twitter, so I'll believe it when I see it, and I'll update you if I hear the results of this. But it's interesting because many people have had experiences like this with other companies, with Hertz, with whoever, And you can complain. And I've had people tell me that I wrote nasty emails and letters to the president of the company. I wrote letters to customer service. I wrote letters to local news agencies. And almost always those go nowhere. But somehow, when you write a letter and post it on Twitter and you get, 12,900 retweets and 51,000 likes, suddenly you get somebody's attention. Hertz doesn't need this kind of publicity. But then again, at this point, they've cratered so badly lately, they might not care. So that's the story for you of the law professor who had the issue with the rental, and it went viral over Hertz's experience during Thanksgiving, which she called extortion. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Develop success from failures. Discouragement and failure are two of the surest stepping stones to success.